Shh. Hear that? Big waves are calling. Dive into refreshment with Kona Big Wave. Tropical flavor and the taste of aloha in every drop. So crack one open and let the great taste roll in. Kona Big Wave, liquid aloha. Copyright 2025 Kona Brewing Co., St. Louis, Missouri. Mahalo for enjoying responsibly.
When you wanna grow your list size,
pop up like it's hot, pop up like it's hot, pop up like it's hot.
And when you gotta boost your revenue,
pop up like it's hot, hey, pop up like it's hot, pop up like it's hot.
Pick your favorite template, you can tailor to your brand. They're MailChimp-erific, you're gonna be a fan. MailChimp your marketing with our new customizable pop-ups.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
Welcome to the New Books Network.
I'm Chris Holmes, and this is Burned by Books. Here you'll find interviews with writers you already love, like Jennifer Egan and Rebecca Makkai, mixed in with up-and-coming voices like Alexandra Kleeman and Rumaan Alam. You'll find us wherever you listen to podcasts, but check out previous episodes at burnedbybooks.com and on Instagram and Twitter at burnedbybooks. Let's start the show. Welcome to the annual Booksellers Best episode of Burned by Books, where we ask booksellers and general managers and owners of independent bookstores to come on and talk to us about their favorite books of the year and the books they are most anticipating in the year to come. This has been a tradition for Burned by Books since the podcast began in 2020, and it really is a wonderful way to test the temperature of the year that was in the book world. I often use the lists that booksellers bring as Christmas and Yola Book Flood purchase guides for gifts for family and friends, and I know from listeners who get in touch that they do too. Today, I'm joined by two owners and operators of independent bookstores who are here to talk about the books they love and what makes their stores so special. That's the other thing about this episode is that I, like so many of you who listen, feel connected to and dedicated to the independent bookstores in my town and in the towns and cities that I visit. And this episode is also all about supporting those stores and getting folks to think about where they make their purchases of books this year, because it matters. A single choice to go to an independent bookstore versus to use an online megastore like Amazon can mean the difference between a year of in the black or the red. It is a truth that no one doubts that nobody knows the worlds of books the same way that someone who works in an independent bookstore does. They have a vantage on that world that is wider and deeper than any of us could ever hope to have, no matter how much we nerd out about books. We're going to have our booksellers' full lists of favorites up at the website burnedbybooks.com with links to purchase them from our two stores that are represented today, and I will hope you will use those links liberally. Let's get to know a little bit about our booksellers this year. So Lisa Swayze has been doing this with me from the beginning. She has been general manager at Buffalo Street Books for 7 years and will transition in a very exciting turn for the bookstore to executive director of the new literary nonprofit, Buffalo Street Books, in 2025. Lisa is on the board of directors of the American Booksellers Association and the Downtown Ithaca Alliance. She's also the person I trust more than anyone on the planet to give me a book that I will love. Joining us for the first time is Jessica Stockton Bagnulo, and she is the owner and co-founder of Greenlight Bookstore in Brooklyn, New York, where she is also currently serves as the events and marketing manager because she loves hosting parties. She has worked in independent bookstores in New York City since 2000. She has served on the board of the NAIBA and various other book industry boards and committees, and is currently on the board of the American Booksellers Association. She lives with her husband and daughter, both avid readers, thankfully, in Brooklyn. Welcome to the show, Lisa and Jessica.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, I am so excited to get this conversation started, and I want to kick it off with a question that's both practical and a little bit metaphysical, which is, how are things feeling in your stores this year? What do the practical economics look like of selling books at the independent store level, but also how are customers engaging with books? Does it feel different in the store? Is it, the things that you're expecting from this time of year? But give us a sense of like what the vibe is in the store these days. Jessica, do you want to start us off and talk a little bit about Greenlight?
Sure. I mean, I want to say it's been a transition year for us, but I feel like the last 5 or 6 years have just been nothing but transition back to back. We closed our second location in the middle of last year. So this is the first year we've been able to compare apples to apples in terms of our economics. But we've actually been doing pretty well this year. I have a really great management team who's sort of helped with, we had some financial stresses that we had to resolve, and we've come a long way to doing that. And it does feel like the customers are really here for it. We've had pretty strong sales already this season. And I think one of the funnest indicators is we had 2 midnight release parties in the fall, and just the excitement and the delight and the media coverage of that kind of event just to me is like a great sign of the joy and excitement around books in the world right now.
One of them had to be Intermezzo, but
yeah,
what was the other one?
The other was the new Haruki Murakami book, The City and Its Uncertain Wall.
Great.
So another author who doesn't really tour, but has a very passionate fan base.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, how about at Buffalo Street?
Well, it's been an interesting year, but aren't they all? It's been a year of huge ups and downs for us. We definitely saw a drop in sales in the store for a big chunk of the year, which led us to starting a campaign and led us to making the decision to finally make the move to a nonprofit. So I've been sort of thinking about doing that and talking about doing that for a long, long time. I think it will be a better model for the long term. So we're excited about that. And then the thing that always heartens me immensely is as we were making these transitions and talking to our customers and the people who come in all the time and love us, and they just rise to the occasion. They get so excited when we have a plan that we might, here we are, we now have a plan and we think it's going to be able to make us be more sustainable. And, people really want us to be there, and you really feel that. So that's been super gratifying. And yeah, I think that our holiday sales are up a bit at this point, which is super amazing. Yeah, it's been a tricky year, but we're here.
Yeah, which is the important thing. And I think for, listeners who might hear nonprofit and think, well, how can that be? You're a store that sells books. So maybe you could talk us through a little bit what it looks like for a bookstore to be a nonprofit.
Sure. So we're basically going to fold the bookstore into a larger literary nonprofit. And the way we can do that, and the reason it makes sense, is because we do so many free events for the entire community throughout the year. I think we do about 150 events, and that's like almost every other day. And so that is a lot more like the model you see in a nonprofit theater, for example. And so it's just a move on the part of bookstores to kind of own that space in the same way and get more community grant support for some of those efforts we do that bring the literary arts to our neighborhoods and our customers. So that's the gist of it. And on top of all that, you get to have a carefully curated indie bookstore where everyone in your community can see themselves on the shelves. And that's a public good too.
Yeah, that runs right into my next question, which is about the distinctive characters of independent bookstores and the ways in which they reflect their communities. And what I love is that they look and feel and act different from one another, as opposed to the sort of numbing sameness of a Barnes and Nobles. And I wonder if you'd tell me a little bit, each of you, about what makes your store special and what a first-time bibliophile visitor to the store would be delighted by in entering your place. Do you want to start us off, Jessica?
Sure. But first, I want to say, Lisa, I love that for you. I'm so excited that you guys are taking the next steps. I know this is like something you've been kind of thinking about and figuring out, and it sounds so great. I mean, and obviously, like, your store occupies that place in the community. And I've always been so interested in your business model and the unique way that your store comes at it. And one of these days, I'm going to actually get up and visit you. Yes. And then, yeah. And I mean, obviously, that's what the first thing I do when I go somewhere new is visit the local indie bookstore, because they are all so different. The curation is different, sort of interior architecture is different. Our store, I mean, right now, it's especially unique because a local children's book author asked if she could have permission to do a mural on our front windows that's sort of a celebration of reading, but it features portraits of actual people from our neighborhoods. So,
Wow.
Yes, I saw that and I was so excited.
yeah, Katie Yamasaki, she's a children's book illustrator and also a muralist, and she lives in our neighborhood. We worked with her a lot, and I'm like, I could never afford this incredible artwork that she's done, but it's such a celebration of, like, the mail carrier is there, and the flower shop person,
wow.
and someone who works at the nail salon, and my kid, sort of like reading a graphic novel in the corner, and a couple of our staff. So that's like incredibly special. I mean, and we're really lucky that we have these very big front windows, like big old fashioned windows that make our space look larger than it is. Because on the inside, it's kind of like a triangle. There's not nearly as much space as those windows would imply, but they, I hope, give a sense of welcome, which is something that is always like, it's the top of our mission statement, is to create a welcoming space. So you walk in and there's a little bit of open space, and then it's this funky old building. So there's a lot of kind of little nooks and crannies that you can explore as you go in. So yeah, I love that. And of course, the curation is very much about like our neighborhood in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, and our customers. But yeah, I love our building. I love the space that we're in.
That's such an amazing, like, microcosm of what I think of as the best thing about an independent bookstore, which is it's reflecting out of the community that actually shops there, and is the circulation around the store and in the store. What a lucky, wonderful thing that she came and asked.
Yeah, she is incredible. We adore her.
Lisa, let's find a local muralist to do the same for Buffalo.
Well, we have our connections, so because we actually have a beautiful mural in our reading room that a local muralist did. So I might, see how much she wants to do next year now that I haven't saw her. But yeah, and then just in general, I'm dying to visit. I can't believe I've never been to Greenlight. It's ridiculous these days. It's so interesting. I think one of the things that really defines our store is that we have this reading room. It's a space where anyone can hang out as long as we're open. They don't have to buy something. We have students in there plugged into their computers. We have, neighbors stopping by. We're right next to the co-op grocery store. So people come by and sit and have their lunch or drink their coffee and have a meeting. And of course, it's where we have all of our events. And it's just a big piece of what it feels like to be Buffalo Street Books, is that we are this sort of center in the community for anyone who wants to stop in. And I think that that's a big piece of what we try to reflect in our curation too. And always people compliment our poetry section all the time. They're like, I just can't believe you have so much better poetry section than most bookstores I've been to. And I'm always like, we cannot take credit. It's our community, because we have so many writers and poets and people who love to read poetry and academics. And so what they tell me they want to read, what they order, what they continue to buy is entirely how we curate that section. And it's a really good example of how that works in an indie bookstore.
Yeah, I think that's really nice for people to know that that's the way these things come about, is that the community buys them and they show up again. And the community asks for specific things to be in the store. And then you'll walk in and you'll find a collection of poetry you've never seen before. And that happens to me all the time. And I am kind of up to my eyeballs in books and new releases. And every time I go in Buffalo Street Books, there's something new that I didn't know about, that Lisa has probably read, and that I can, engage in and be excited about. So it's such a big part of my life in books. I'm gonna, do a little bit of a 180 to talk about, we talk about the joys of independent bookstores, but I want to broach for a second the subject of the strike by booksellers at the Strand. It's something I've been following really closely and reading a lot about because I care so much about independent bookstores. And it's such an icon for New York City, but it has really been taken to task for both its poor work culture and its consistent low wages for its employees, despite being one of the most profitable indies in the country and certainly in New York City. Workers have been attempting to bargain for years, but finally had to vote to strike in order to pressure the store for what ultimately is quite a small rise in pay and benefits. I don't want to call it a win, but I also want to recognize how much effort and strength of the cause it took for those bargainers to get to where they got, and see it instead as a sign of pretty desperate economic times for bookstores and people who work in bookstores. So my question is a broad one. Can indie bookstores be places that engage in economic commerce while also preserving a workplace that can sustain and nourish employees? And can an ideal of a bookstore that cares about all those who enter be something that stands as a bulwark against the cruelest aspects of capitalism? And either of you can jump in.
I'm always looking for ways to show my cat how much I love her. And with Fancy Feast gems, I can pamper her whenever I want with a savory gravy on top of a gourmet mousse pâté. The pyramid shape makes serving simple, so all I have to do is peel and plate to make mealtime feel extra fancy. And with 2 entrees in every pack, it's easy to turn every day into the extraordinary. Fancy Feast gems.
When kids don't play, they grow up without creativity. They'll try to blend in and wear chinos, or worse, polyester chinos. Good thing Gushers, Fruit by the Foot, and Fruit Roll-Ups are made to be played with. You better be playing.
Ooh, that's a good question, Chris. And I am actually really curious about Lisa's answer, because I think nonprofit status is another way to tackle that question for sure. Greenlight Bookstore staff is also union. The staff organized with RWDSU Local 1102 in 2021. And that was kind of terrifying at the time, although we recognized the union voluntarily. But it's actually been such a helpful structure for having difficult conversations. And I mean, the union reps that I've worked with have always acted in good faith. They understand our industry. They understand that, what the economics actually are. And I spoke to a union magazine recently because the employees at Barnes & Noble were also doing a labor action there. There's a lot of that happening in New York in particular.
Mhm.
And a strike doesn't happen unless someone is not sitting down at the table. You got to sit down at the table. But I mean, I think one of the things that having the union has prompted us to do is we're now working on an open book management system. So we every month share with our staff sort of the top line, like, here's all of the sales. Yay, that looks great. Here's all of the expenses.
Mhm.
And we, some months, sometimes the number at the bottom is positive and sometimes it's negative. But it's not that we're, sitting on a huge pile of profits, and my take home is included in that. Everybody's payroll is included in that. And we are continuing to work towards, our wages are far higher than they were before the pandemic. I think all independent bookstores have seen the percentage of payroll as a percentage of sales is far higher than the standard used to be. But I think that's a good thing. I mean, it means that like the owner may have to take home a little bit less. Like that's how that works. And it's never going to be an industry where people are getting rich that I can imagine, unless, they start pricing books like jewelry or something like that.
Oh God.
But I do think that we can work together to make it as sustainable as possible, to use a great word that Lisa had used. It's about sustainability. Like, how can we build not only a company that's sustainable, but a livelihood that is sustainable? And I think that's the biggest question in book selling right now. It's something we constantly talk about on the ABA board. How can we make this possible? And it's not an easy answer, but I think, sitting like workers and owners sitting down together is one of the ways to get closer to a solution. I don't know if that helps.
That's a great answer. And I love the transparency part of it. I think that, dealing with the complicated and sometimes pretty depressing stakes of book selling and its tiny, tiny margins, but being transparent about where those margins go and what goes to make it, if possible, sustainable seems like a great first step in that way. Lisa, I'm dying to hear what you have to say about.
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing about our bookstore is that we have always paid a living wage since it was formed back in 2011. We always work to the Tompkins County living wage, and that has been really helpful. I would say up until 2021-ish, I would post a job and I would get 50 applicants for just a bookseller job. And in part, that was because, we have a reputation as being a nice place to work. Bookstores are generally a nice place to work. And we had that living wage, hourly wage, which was better than a lot of other local small businesses could do. It was a struggle always. It definitely, payroll is one of our largest expenses and is, but we just we've never let that be a negotiable, that we wouldn't at least do that. This year, there was a major jump in the living wage, and it took us the whole year to get there, but we got there. So we are now, everyone's at the living wage again. And it's a good thing. Again, it's a good thing. They deserve it and they need it. They deserve more than we can give them still. But the hope is that any ways that we can increase the stability of indie bookstores and provide a little more profit margin will help us make those jobs more livable. And that's the big goal. I mean, our bottom line is consistently been, say $20,000 to $60,000, off every year in the red. And hopefully, by covering some of that cost with community support through grants and even through things like being able to apply for work study students as a nonprofit, will fill that gap and give us a little more flexibility that can help us do an even better job for our employees. And I guess I would also say what's been fascinating this year is just how engaged our staff have been. They're coming to the board meetings, because we were a cooperative and are now going to be a nonprofit. We've always had a board, and an employee would come here or there. But as we were facing, these losses and this concern and starting to fundraise, they just showed up and they were asking good questions and they were, really responding to the need. And I think that's also all to the good. The more engaged everyone is, the more we're all working to the same goals.
Well, those are wonderful answers. I want to transition us to the really exciting meat of the show, which is hearing from you what your top books of the year were. I have your lists in front of me, but I thought what we could do is have you start with two that you're particularly excited about. Jessica, you have these sort of wonderful descriptors, short descriptors next to your favorites. And I wonder if you want to start with a couple of those books and give us those descriptors and maybe a few more details.
Sure. Yeah, I was having way too much fun with these. It's a great question to be asked. So I'll start with a couple at the top. So my pick for the best literary novel featuring complex magic systems, diverse love stories, unexpected beauty, and karaoke was The Book of Love by Kelly Link. And this was a novel that I was anticipating because I've always loved her short stories. And I'm like,
Yeah, I think of her as
yeah.
a short fiction wunderkind, but never as a novelist.
Yeah, this is her first novel. And I actually loved it because I felt like the length forced her to explain more of the magic than she usually does. It's usually sort of like, wow, I have no idea what just happened. But it's such a gorgeous, complex literary novel that's completely infused with magic. So I've been gifting this one a lot. It's like something you can just kind of lose yourself in. Set in Massachusetts, where she lives, the cast are mostly teenagers, but there are people of all ages and, all different kinds of love are represented in the Book of Love. So that one is like right there, right at the top.
I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And then I was thrilled to have a nonfiction on my list, which I don't always, but I chose Best Science Writing / Best Book About Plant Intelligence and Scientist Drama, was The Light Eaters by Zoe Schlanger. And I've been fascinated since reading Richard Powers' The Understory about the idea of plant intelligence, but I have a hard time getting through, really hardcore nonfiction. But Zoe Schlanger is a journalist, and she's such a compelling writer that she pulls together sort of the current state of research about, what, how do plants sense? What are plants communicating? Like, what do they have desires? All of the stuff that but also the fact that a lot of it is still really controversial. It's not settled facts yet, and people have really strong opinions about it. So that makes it as interesting as any of the rest of it. And then I start to look at my houseplants a little bit differently. I'm like, what's going on with you guys? But that was a great one.
Yeah, when I'm walking around Ithaca ever since reading the Richard Powers, I'm wondering what conversations are happening in the root systems of the trees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lisa, you want to give us a couple of your favorites?
Yeah, and I'm gonna come in with everyone's favorite of the year, I think. But I feel like I'm allowed to still say it's my favorite because I discovered it way before anyone else had read it. I read it as an advanced reader copy back last September, I think. And I remember coming home and being like, I have to tell everyone about this book, but nobody else has read it yet. And that is James by Percival Everett, which did.
You told me when you were in the store, must have been around that time, that it was going to win every single award.
Oh, you called it. You called it, Lady Beth.
We did.
That's also very satisfying, I must admit. But it's just so good. It's such a powerful book. The writing is, of course, gorgeous. He knows what he's doing. But it just turns so many of our expectations on their head and their heads. And it makes you laugh. It's just the cleverest book. I think when he won the National Book Award, they said it's just destined to be a new classic. And I think that's absolutely right. It'll be read and read and read and read for years and years. So I'm very happy that book has been getting the attention that I figured it deserved early on. Another book that I think I told you about early when I read it that I loved this year, Chris, was Swift River by Essie.
Yeah, you gave me that ARC, which I devoured. And
so with that one, I read it as part of the ABA Indies Next. Oh gosh, Jess, I'm always getting those backwards.
I think Indies first.
Indies Introduced.
So Indies Introduced. You're right. Yep, that's the one.
Third one.
Got it. There could be any really, but it is Indies Introduced, where we read a panel of booksellers read debut novels that are submitted by different publishers. We read about 60 to 80 titles and narrow it down to our top 10 that we then can kind of co-promote throughout all the indie bookstores. And this was hands down our favorite book for the panel last spring. And it's a book set in a kind of old industrial town in Massachusetts. I picture like a Worcester.
Yeah.
And the lead character is a young Black woman who's still in high school, getting close to being ready to leave, but is very much stuck. She's someone who is a large person in many ways, but definitely physically. And you feel that the setting is so vibrant that it's almost a character in this novel. And then it's got this whole this layers of, history and what does historical trauma bring into the present on on top of this coming of age story. I just loved this book, so I'm still pushing it.
Yeah, it's a really great one. Jessica, I'm going to prompt you on at least one. You're going to share two because, interestingly, it was a 2023 book, but I also have it on my best 10 for 2024, Orbital by Samantha Harvey. And I wonder if you'd talk about that and another one on your list.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Orbital is out in paperback now. It came out in hardcover last year. And I think we had a damaged copy in the store, like right after it had won. What was the one? The Booker, yes. And so I was like, oh, why not? I don't always read the Booker, but like, let me take this damaged copy home and read it. And I actually slowed myself down and forced myself to read it over like the course of a week because it's sentence by sentence so gorgeous. And I feel like what Samantha Harvey is doing is like creating in literature the famous effect that seeing the Earth from space has on you. That it's like you suddenly get the sense of like how fragile the Earth is, how singular it is, and how massive, how every human who's ever lived or died is right there on that little glowing ball. And it's there, it's set in the International Space Station. There are about 6 scientists. It takes place over the course of 24 hours, which is 16 orbits of the planet. So just the surreality of seeing sunrise and sunset over and over and over again, but like watching the landscape go by and thinking about how politics both is and is not connected to that landscape. It's like a big thinky book that's just really gorgeous sentence by sentence but small. Like it's such a beautiful little sort of pocket-sized just thing of beauty to hand to someone. It's really
your moniker is best sentences about Earth. I couldn't agree with more. I was transported it felt like a literal way to have a context of distance from my own planet. And in the ways in which those scientists talk about the very, very micro specificity of the place they live on Earth, even as they're observing these giant geographic and physical dimensions of the planet swing by their viewing window.
Yeah, you got it. Absolutely right. And should I do one more?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah, just to go really local where I am, Helen Phillips is another author who's like a neighbor and friend of the store. And I always love reading her because she's one of those, you're like, wait, how are you just a person in the world? You're this transcendent genius and you're just walking around. But her new novel is Hum. And I always love reading her because like, I feel like she has a sense of like the high stakes of being like a woman as a wife and mother. That like, that's not just like this little domestic side plot, like it's huge, but also there's a surreality, like sort of a surreal engagement with late stage capitalism. So she can do all of that and also write a really compelling plot. So Hum is set in a near future dystopia where there are AI, like embodied AI, who are very, very helpful and also always want to sell you stuff. And the tragic thing is that the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, which is like this really oasis that, you could pay a couple bucks and anybody can go there, has been turned into a private nature hotel for rich people. And the main character just is super broke, but really wants to take her family there because she thinks they're too involved with their phones and their electronics and like they need to like experience real life. And so she sort of makes some sacrifices to get them there and things, of course, go horribly wrong. But it's really interesting to see like neighborhoods that I'm familiar with that, in a world that could be like the day after tomorrow, but it's so strange. So, it's about, so my tagline was best near future dystopia that is also about parenting, but she's always brilliant, always worth reading.
The McDonald's snack wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch snack wrap. Spicy snack wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
The Nordstrom Anniversary Sale is on now. Shop new arrivals on sale for a limited time from Madewell, Bobbi Brown, New Balance, and more. You'll find tons of deals under $100 on summer-ready fits, plus beauty exclusives from your favorite brands. Nordstrom makes shopping easy in stores, at Nordstrom.com, and on their app. Hurry, prices go up August 4th.
And that's going directly on my to buy for myself list. No one's getting it as a gift. But Lisa, what are your next two?
So I'm going to bring up the books that I enjoyed being taken away by the most this year, and then the book that put me most inside the harsh realities of the world, side by side here. The nonfiction is A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy by Nathan Thrall. And it did come out last year, and I think did it win a Pulitzer or the National Book Award? I can't remember. But it is a nonfiction set in Jerusalem and the surrounding territories. And I read it this year in paperback. It's very difficult in some ways, but what I found profound about it was the way that it could, through this one story, there is a tragic bus accident of a school bus on a trip, and how that unfolds, the aftermath of that, the ways that healthcare is impacted, emergency services are impacted, information is shared or not shared, or so it just illuminates everything about how life works in those occupied territories in that area. And I found it just so profound and brilliant. So that's one. And then on a much lighter note, although, I read Sapling Cage by Margaret Killjoy. We had the pleasure of having Margaret at our Ithaca's Books Festival this September, and that was super exciting. We were all really thrilled to have her. But this book, I just picked it up, by chance, grabbed the ARC. It was published by the Feminist Press, which was like, okay, the Feminist Press is publishing this book, and it's a kind of a trans witchy fantasy. So that makes me interested. And it's a lovely, super fun story. It has a girl who wants to be a knight, a young person who isn't clear what their gender is, but really wants to be a witch and is told they're a boy, so they can't be. And then they both go off and have their adventures and their lives overlap. And it's very rich and lush and just super fun.
Queer witchy fantasy or trans witchy fantasy sounds pretty amazing.
So there for that. Yeah. 100. That one's going on my to-read list, Lisa.
It's also, and it's a great one for when you're like overworked or overtired or burdened by the world, because it totally takes you away.
Oh, that sounds great. Jessica, how about one more from your best of list?
Oh, from this year. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll segue from Lisa's. My pick for best queer multiverse novel was Emmett North's In Universes, which is also one of my favorite genres, which is a novel in stories. So this one, there's a main character and there are a number of ancillary characters, but in every story, it's sort of a different version of them, and different genders, different relationships with each other, and some of them are very sort of like fantastical worlds or future worlds. Some of them are very sort of present day, but it was just such a fun experiment to sort of imagine all of the different iterations of these characters and of who they might be and who they might be to each other. And we hosted Emmett North for a conversation with Julia Phillips, and they were so fascinating. It was really, really
what
good.
A nice pair.
It was an awesome conversation.
Lisa, how about you?
Gosh, it's hard to choose just one. I'm going to go with one that I'm not sure as many people have heard about, so it's an opportunity to introduce them. A mystery that came out this year, Where They Last Saw Her by Marcie Rendon. Marcie Rendon is an Indigenous author. She's written some earlier mystery series with Cash Black Bear that are a lot of fun. But this one, I feel like she just really hit her stride. It's very woman-centric. It's about a group of women friends, and it raises the stark issue of missing Indigenous women, but in a very local, specific way around these women's lives and how they come together to solve this problem of missing women. And it's gripping as a good mystery, and I think it opens up some new worlds for people. So I'm going to recommend that one.
That's fantastic. One of the things that I count on booksellers so much for is looking ahead to the year in books to come. And we're a little short on time, but in our at our last minutes together, I'm wondering if you could tell me 2 books that you think should be on people's minds as they're going to be looking for the newest, most exciting, most transporting, most affecting reads of the year to come. Jessica, you want to start us with a couple that we should have in mind?
Sure. So this is funny to have more than one, but another neighbor who also like writes really compellingly about sort of women's like domestic lives, for lack of a better word, is Lynn Stager Strong. Her book Want was just like electrifying. It was really, really incredible.
That was maybe my favorite book of that year, if not, like top 3.
Yeah, it was astonishing. It was really like a revelation. She has a new book called The Float Test that's coming out in April that I am really, really excited about. I'm waiting for my galley to arrive so I can read it before we host her, because I'm like, anything she does, I will read. So I don't really know that much about it except that it's Lynn and it's going to be absolutely brilliant. So I'm thrilled about that.
You and your neighbors.
I know. Yeah. Alison Bechdel has a new graphic novel coming out, do you know, called Bent. It's about money. It's about, it's sort of all of the characters from Dykes to Watch Out For. And it's sort of some variation on kind of like a get rich quick scheme that goes wrong is my impression of it. But it looks like a lot of fun. It should be awesome. And then if I can squeeze in one more, Anne's new novel coming in March. It's called Twist. And it sounds like it owes something to a book that we've sold a lot of called Tubes, which is about like the physical infrastructure of the internet. So this is about characters who are sort of involved with, repairing those underwater lines that make, the worldwide internet possible, but also who, may have something to lose in that sort of like international communication exchange. So I'm always excited to read what he writes.
So I'm not totally ridiculous when I talk about information going through the tubes.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. That look up there is a really great nonfiction book called Tubes. That we've sold like 1 million copies of. It's fantastic. I'll look up the information for you. I wish I knew more than that.
I want you to flag, only because I'm having both Colum and Karen on in the coming year. We flag Karen Russell's new book for us just quickly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is a galley that I have sitting on my nightstand that I haven't gotten to yet, but her new book is called The Antidote. And again, it's just sort of, I'm like, I don't know anything about it yet. I just know it's Karen Russell, and it's going to be just an explosion of brilliance. So
yeah, same. Lisa.
Well, I first want to add Alison Bechdel, which I did not have on my list, but I should have, because she just stopped in the store recently and we got to look full.
She has so many Ithaca connections.
She is, and that's how we got her to stop in. And now we're going to be best friends, and I'm sure she's going to be back next year with a new book. So I'm just putting that out into the universe. But the 2 books I was most thinking about were, I'm a big Charlotte McConaughey fan, and her 3rd novel, Wild Dark Shore, is coming out in March. She's an Australian writer. Her book.
You've been hand selling all her stuff. Yeah, it's the first one.
Yeah. I think she's just a really good writer. She does basically, I think all of her books are in what I would call in a climate fiction category, and yet they're all very different. And what I love is that they also just have compelling narratives that you don't want to put them down. You want to know what's going to happen to these people. So I'm excited about that. That's in March. And then our mutual fave, Chris, Mr. Kevin Wilson, just found out this weekend, has a new book coming out in May. It's called Run for the Hills. I started reading it last night.
What do you think?
Working through it. It's very fun. It's super clever in that way that is so unique to Kevin Wilson. It's a story of it starts with a young girl and her father on a farm in maybe Oklahoma, I can't remember. And then, 20 years later, a guy pulls up to the farm. The dad has left long ago, and he turns out to be a long lost half brother. And he tells her that there are at least 2 other children in completely other relationships in completely other states. And does she want to go on a road trip to help find them? So that is the premise. Very, very odd and funky Kevin Wilson style premise, and great characters, unbelievable narrative, really fun. So
He is the beating, empathetic heart of contemporary literature.
That is so true.
So I want listeners to know that the full lists will be available at burnedbybooks.com, and they will be linked so that you can purchase them at Greenlight and Buffalo Street Books. As you're thinking about shopping at indie bookstores, I'd ask you to send some of your shopping to these two wonderful special indie bookstores. And I want to thank Jessica Stockton-Bagnulo and Lisa Swayze for a wonderful conversation about really fantastic books.
Thank you so much, Chris. What a treat.
Yeah, so much fun. I just want to keep talking, but I know we need to stop, so.
Yeah, me too. Thank you both.
Thank you. Take care.
Well, that's all from me for now. My enormous thanks to Lisa Swayze, General Manager of Buffalo Street Books in Ithaca, New York, and Jessica Stockton-Bagnulo, owner of Greenlight Books in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, for coming on to talk about their best books of 2024 and the books they can't wait to read and sell in 2025. You can find links to purchase all of their recommended books at the website, burnedbybooks.com. There you'll find all of our previous episodes, links to buy a podcast t-shirt, and ways to get in contact. As you listen, take a moment to rate the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time, this has been Burned by Books.